Letter 6. My dear Father, your letter, dear Father, commands me to banish this novelty from my mind and continue humbly to worship Jehovah after the manner of our fathers. I trust this I shall ever do, my dear Father, and did I discover in this prophet any disposition to bring in a new faith opposed to the ancient faith of Abraham, I should tremble to entertain it for a moment. You say that this man must be a false and base prophet, or he would not herald a master so low and despised as he professes will be the Christ he bears witness to. The kingdom of Messiah is not a kingdom of repentance and humiliation, you add, but one of victory, of glory, and dominion. How can I write to you, my dear Father, that which is now rushing to my pen after such an expression of your sentiments as you have made in this extract from your letter? But I know you are wise, and will not evade truth in whatever form it may offer itself to you, and I, therefore, with confidence in your justice and wisdom, will faithfully make known to you the events relating to the prophet which have transpired. You will remember how that John, Mary's cousin, stated that many priests and others were offended at the plain preaching of the prophet whom they went out into the wilderness to see. When they returned to Jerusalem and made known to the other members of the house of the priests what had been spoken against them, by the application to them of the words of Isaiah and Jeremiah and other prophets, there arose at once a great outcry against him. At length Annas, who was high priest with Caiaphas, sent 2 of the most learned men of the temple, Levites of weight of character, to invite the prophet to Jerusalem. For Annas is a wise man and not easily carried away by popular feeling, and as Rabbi Amos hath told me, he is disposed to look upon the preaching of this John with a serious and reverential eye. The messengers returned after the 5th day and made their report openly in the court of the temple, where the high priest sat to receive them. At length the assembly being convened, the 2 learned and venerable Levites both rose up, and declared that they had delivered the message to John, the son of Zacharias, the prophet of Jordan, and that his answer was given with the reverence due to the station of the high priest who had sent to him. "Go and say to the noble high priest," said he, "that I am the voice of one crying in the wilderness, as it is written in the book of the words of Isaiah the prophet, who foreseeing my day saith, the voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare ye the way of the Lord, make his path straight. He who would hear my testimony to him who is to come after me, let him seek me in the wilderness, whence only I am commanded to lift up my voice till Shiloh come." When the priests heard this answer, they were greatly enraged, and many fiercely cried one thing and many another, some that he should be sought out and stoned to death for defying the high priest, others that he should be accused to the procurator Pontius Pilate, governor of Judea, as a seditious and dangerous person and fomenter of insurrections. Caiaphas was of the latter opinion, but the milder Annas viewed the whole matter in a different light, and said, "Men and brethren, let nothing be done hastily. If this man be a false prophet, he will soon perish, and we shall hear no more of him. If peradventure, as it would appear, he is sent from God, let us not make haste to do him a mischief, lest haply we be found contending against the Lord of hosts." This moderation found favor with but few, and of these few Rabbi Amos was one. But if the priests who thronged the outer court in presence of the high priest were deeply moved at the report of the prophet's answer, their excitement became well nigh uncontrollable when both Melchi and Heli, their messengers, rose up, waving their hands for silence, and declared that after having listened to the prophet to whom they had been sent, they were convinced of the truth of his words and of his divine commission, and had been baptized of him in Jordan, confessing their sins. Only the sanctity of the temple prevented the 500 priests rushing upon them and smiting them when they heard this. They were at once placed under arrest by order of the high priest Caiaphas for acting in a manner unbecoming a priest of the Most High God. The people who had heard John preach, however, were only prevented from rescuing the 2 priests by the presence of a guard of Roman soldiers, for which Caiaphas promptly sent. From this account, my dear Father, you can form some idea of the excitement which the preaching of this new prophet is producing among all classes. If the Prince of Glory should indeed suddenly appear, there could be scarcely more excitement, though it would be of a different nature. As next week Rabbi Amos does not serve in his course in the temple, and as he will have some affairs that take him to Gilgal, He has yielded to the desire of his daughter Mary and myself to accompany him. For he does not conceal from us that he shall make it a point to visit and hear the prophet, as it will be but 2 hours' travel from Gilgal to the place where he preaches. You will, I fear me, object to this journey. But if the worship of our fathers has nothing to fear from falsehood, it surely has not to fear from truth. And in either case I, as a true daughter of Israel, have nothing to fear. If the prophet teach what is false, I shall remain true. And if he teach that which is true, shall I not be the gainer? One thing is clear. If the Christ that John prophesies be the true Son of the Highest, and is in reality to make his appearance ere long, in humiliation and poverty, his rejection by the high priests and by the rich and powerful of Judah is certain. May God then remove blindness from our eyes, that if this be the very Messiah indeed, Israel may recognize their king when he cometh, and not do so fearful a thing in their pride as to reject him openly. You will remember the young Roman centurion to whom courtesy I was indebted for rescuing me from the rudeness of the 2 Gentile soldiers. He has preserved since then acquaintance with Rabbi Amos, who speaks of him with respect, and he has of late expressed some interest in knowing what the studies are which occupy the rabbi so constantly when he calls to see him. The rabbi sent for me to come into the marble hall of the corridor, where they sat by the fountain under the shade of the acacia, which Amos says you took with your own hands from Isaiah's grave and planted here many years ago, and which I therefore call my father's tree.
Come hither, Adina,
said my uncle in his benevolent tones.
Here you behold a noble Roman youth whom you must be too generous to have forgotten.
I bowed and scarcely lifted my eyelids from the tessellated floor, for there was a fire in the glance of the handsome youth that they could not encounter. He said some words of salutation, but I only heard the voice which fell upon my heart with a strange vibration, like the effects of music.
The Roman centurion,
continued Amos,
hath desired to know something of the sacred books of our nation, of which he saith he hath heard much, and of the prophecies, from which he believes the famed Sibylline books were composed.
Then, turning to the centurion,
Here is an Egyptian maiden who can interpret for thee in the idiom of Grecia or of Italia, and I will place the sacred roll in her hands while I listen. Come, Adina, open and read the beginning of the book of Moses.
To this narrative the youthful warrior listened with the profoundest respect and attention. He asked if the Messiah had yet come who was to restore all things, and if not, when he was to be looked for. This inquiry led to a conversation upon the preaching of John in the wilderness and his predictions of the near advent of Shiloh. Rabbi Amos, seeing that he was becoming deeply interested in the subject, made me turn to the particular prophecies of Daniel, Isaiah, David, and others, and read them to him, both those which described in golden words the glory and dominion of his power, and those which represented him as despised and rejected. The young man remained some time very thoughtful. At length he said with animation,
I can now comprehend why men run into the wilderness. I should like to hear this prophet.
When Amos told him that he contemplated journeying to Gilgal the next week and intended to visit the desert to hear him, he at once asked permission to be of his company, saying,
I will accompany you with a squadron of horse, as the roads are not safe, for no longer ago than yesterday we received a rumor that the celebrated robber chief Barabbas, at the head of a large band, has made his appearance again on the hills between Ephraim and Jericho.
It is therefore decided, dear father, that we leave early next week for Jericho and Gilgal. On my return I shall not fail to write you without delay. Till then, withhold your judgment and have confidence in mine. With holy aspirations for the coming of the kingdom of David and the restoration of his throne in Zion, I remain with filial love your daughter, Adina.